I love about the free enterprise system? Somebody who's watching how a product is made or how a service is delivered might say, you know, I could do better than that. And they do, and they change the entire industry. Again, that's just one of the things I love about free enterprise. Well, 20 years ago, this guy named Dwayne was trying to take care of his aging mom. And he was disappointed with the options that were available. And he didn't like what he viewed as the substandard service quality. And he said, hey, look, my mom deserves better than this. So he ends up founding his own company with half a dozen or so employees in Redmond, Washington. That company that this guy founded is Aegis Living. And Dwayne is, of course, the CEO, Dwayne Clark. Just a year after he founded the company, he went from 7 employees to 145, and they went from 1 community to 28, and they got another 10 on the drawing boards. They're celebrating their 20th anniversary. Again, I just love stories like this, success stories in free enterprise that make everybody better off. Dwayne Clark joins me here for a few moments on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Good morning, Dwayne.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me.
And you heard my intro there. Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you. We feel very fortunate and blessed to have been here 20 years. It feels like yesterday that we started above a deli in Redmond. So,
and your new headquarters in Bellevue. So, you what was wrong with how people, homes took care of the elderly, nursing facilities, assisted living took care of the elderly then, and what did you do that was so radically different?
Well, I don't know that your show's long enough, but I think if you think about the stigma of what you think about an old folks home, everything was wrong. What the vision that conjures up, from poor meals to cold tile floors to fluorescent lights to, loud PA speakers paging people over to people moaning in their rooms. I think, there were places that people don't want to go. And, I wanted to make our places that were filled with innovation. And so, one of the things that we started doing is not hiring people from our industry. About 97% of our managers come from 4- and 5-star hotel industries. And so we wanted to have people that were very customer service focused. And then we started bringing in people that had extraordinary entrepreneurial and innovative imagination with regard to architecture. In fact, the last 2 years, our buildings on Madison and Rogers Park have won the National Architectural Awards of the Year. And so we just started thinking of this as another industry, and we started talking to a lot of local companies like Costco and Nordstrom's and Starbucks, and we'd say, well, geez, if Starbucks were to build a senior housing property, how would it be? And we started thinking of things like, if Disney built an Alzheimer's unit, how would it be? And so we just turned the industry upside down and created not only, a different kind of physical plan, but our service element was so different. And beyond all that, one of the things I should say is we started the company with a completely different mindset, that our culture was going to be completely different, and we were going to be a people-first company. And, we've won Best Company to Work For 9 or 10 times. We were voted Glassdoor top 50 company out of 650,000 companies. And just this last week, we were voted as one of the top 15 companies in the nation for work-life balance.
By the way, I should point out, top 15 companies out of 600,000.
Right.
600,000, you're in the top 15. So how do people afford, you've got 5-star, standards, and you're
Right.
bringing, and you have a very high ratio of employees to patients and to residents. And so, how do people afford something like Aegis?
Yeah, that's a good question. And a lot of people think, well, this is just for the elite or this is for rich people and so on. And that's not our target market. What typically happens is the average person that lives in our buildings are teachers and nurses and people that work at Boeing and so on. And typically what happens is those people will have a pension or something. And the way that they afford it is typically people live in our buildings the last 3 to 4 years of their life, is it typically comes from their house equity. And if you look at what's going on in Seattle, we have the most ferocious appreciation of equity in the United States. And so, people are selling their house for $800,000. They may have a small supplement of that house equity on top of their pension to pay for it. And, that's how they afford it.
Okay. Because, that's the future of this country. You see more and more people who don't want to go to the proverbial old folks home. They want to go to a place where they have a quality standard of living, where there are regular activities, real activities and things to do. And, I was with you when you guys unveiled your Bellevue residence down by Maidenbower. I think Winona Judd was in town for that.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
And again, it's wonderful to see places like this. The only question is, but who can afford them? And I think you're pointing out what the economic model is, so that people with middle class backgrounds can afford something like this.
Yeah, and Bellevue we go by generations. Bellevue was generation 42. We're working on generation 57 right now, so it will tell you how far we've come in terms of design and development, in terms of what we're doing. Our next property that we're opening is an all-Chinese assisted living right on the Newcastle-Bellevue border.
I heard about that. Basically, a Chinatown place in Newcastle.
Right, and I don't know if you know the demographics of that area, but within a mile of the site, there's 32,000 Chinese Americans in the Newcastle, Somerset area of that.
No, I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful having a thematic residence.
Yeah, and that thing is just. It'll be like a 6-star Shanghai hotel. It's a phenomenal property. And the interesting thing about it is we were the first company in the United States to have an all-Chinese assisted living down in the Bay Area. And we found that about 10% of the population were non-Chinese people. They were people just like the Chinese lifestyle, whether it was the Chinese food or, they'd lived in China before, but about 10% of the people were not Chinese that live in that place. We anticipate the same thing happening in this property.
Well, Aegis is now up to 28 communities in not only this state, but also California and Nevada, including culture-centered communities. You can follow them on Twitter at Aegis Living. They're on Facebook as well. When I say Aegis, I'm talking AEGIS, AegisLiving.com. Just wanted to bring you on one more success story in free enterprise here in the Puget Sound area and congratulate you, Dwayne, on just a wonderful accomplishment with many more in front of you.
Thanks, John. And I just want to tell your listeners thank you for all your support over the last 20 years, and please watch out for your elderly this week as the temperatures get hot, because elderly people cannot process the heat like everyone else, so please care for them.
Excellent. Dwayne Clark from Aegis Living, thank you very much for joining, the CEO, and just someone who looked around 20 years ago when he was trying to take care of his mom and said, we can do better than this, and they are doing better than this. You're listening to the John Carlson Show, Talk Radio 570 KVI.